Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hello, I'm Rory, and with me as always is Ken. How are you, Ken?
I am exceptionally well. It is episode 101. If you didn't listen to episode 100, get back there and listen to it because it was a real corker. But today is packed with value as well. We're going to be starting off speaking about study-life balance. That's an interesting topic. We hear so much about that one. And then in Practice Matters, we're heading into an area that I guess a lot of us don't want to look at, Rory, and it's when counselling doesn't help our client.
Yes, I'm going to be talking about the times when counselling doesn't work and there's nothing happening, and the kind of clinical thinking that you might have to employ to be both ethical and help the client to get maybe a better outcome.
I sense a referral coming on there, Rory. And then we're going to be ending episode 101 by looking at your own personal development. We often view personal development during our counselling training as a massive positive because we kind of get to learn and grow as individuals, but they can have an effect on our relationships where those around us are maybe not growing at the same rate that we are growing, and that can cause difficulties. So we're going to be looking at that one. But opening us up today, study-life balance. You know, when I was looking at this topic, Rory, I was thinking, does it really exist, this study-life balance?
Well, it's really interesting. There was a student money survey that was taken in 2017, and it said that around 67% of the people who responded worked and studied at the same time. And if you think of a counselling course, that is a big ask, because you've got your placement, you've got your supervision, you've got your residentials, you've got your actually going to college or university. So it does take some jiddling, as we both know, Ken, because we both had to do that juggling, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things to think about is getting yourself a good diary and start to plan your year ahead. You know, and certainly if you're doing shift work, are there any areas in the business that you work in that are going to make more demands on you?
Yeah.
You know, so we've just, here in the UK, we've just had Christmas. And as a consequence of that, more people will be asked to work longer. So the first thing I'd say is that when you're jiddling your work and your life together, try to think about when you may be in more demand at work and see how you can put that in your diary and see how you can work with that. And also have a planner. Make a plan is what I'd say. You got to have a planner.
I like it. And, we speak work-life balance is something that's bandied around a lot. And when you're studying, so often it's study, work, life, family, placement, supervision, life balance. And my feelings on this, so this doesn't make this reality, it's just my thoughts and feelings on it, is when I think about balance, I think about a seesaw. And when it's in perfect balance, you've got one person on one side, one person on the other side. But you can balance a seesaw yourself by kind of standing on it and trying to kind of put your weight in the right place to have the seesaw nicely balanced. So if you get that picture in your mind and then think about work life or study life work balance, I don't believe it really exists, because we don't stay in one fixed point. We might find ourselves very overbalanced because we've got an assignment put in and we kind of close down and lock out everything. We might be a little more distant from our family while we're putting the work into that assignment. And as that clears, we may find ourselves going, you know what, I now need to pay some attention to the family, and finding ourselves over on the other side. So for me, the word balance doesn't fit in my head and in my mind. I do recognize that it is tricky. And I think that very often when we kind of get this topic it comes up in our Facebook group. If you're not a member of the Facebook group, get in there, because this is where these topics are spoken about. That's Counselling Tutor. Put that word in Facebook and we're right there. Knock on the door, we'll let you in. When it comes up, it often catches students by surprise. They find themselves in the thick of it, trying to juggle all the different aspects by the time they realize they don't have the time and they're feeling maybe that they're being worn down. And self-care, we're told as counsellors, is a massive thing. The self-care's got to be in there as well. I think, Rory, the solution is, as you say, look from range. You know, if you're starting your studies now, be aware that it gets tougher, that it's a lot more that gets packed in, and planning. How do you eat an elephant, Rory?
A bite at a time, Ken. Not that we've said that before. I'm not making transparency in this episode either. But and I think also think about your the other aspects of your life. There's family time. If you're going away on vacation or holiday, there's that kind of time. So have some kind of planner. And I think a key thing for managing your time is making sure that if you have to miss classes, and sometimes that does happen, that you can get the information, that you either speak with your tutor in advance if you know you've got a shift, work with a lot of people in fire and rescue service, police service, ambulance service, and sometimes they've been called in, they've had to work. So in advance, say to your tutor, look, if I can't get in, how can I get hold of the information? Buddying up is a great way of doing it. So if you've got a study buddy, a WhatsApp group where people can put resources in, that's really useful too. So you don't feel out of the loop. I think sometimes if you miss a couple of classes, you can feel so far behind.
Yeah.
And I think that the reality is you're not that far behind, but I think mentally it can kind of knock people's confidence. So putting things in place to make sure that if you have to miss a class, how you can catch up or how you can get that information.
100%, and speak about it. I mean, part of the journey to becoming a counsellor on any good course, I believe, is your own personal therapy that you will be asked to do during your journey. Now, this is a great topic to take into therapy. I feel that I can't cope. I'm being crushed. I've got this requirements from work. I've got to do my studies. The family are saying I'm not speaking to them enough. That's a great topic to take into your own personal counselling. And another place where you can discuss that again is the Counselling Tutor group. The topic comes up a number of times, and we're there to listen. And as you said, Rory, when we opened this topic, both you and I know this very well. When I went into my counselling studies, I was in a full-time job and I had a weekend job as well. So I was holding a full-time job down, a weekend job that I was doing, and the study and the placement and the supervision. I remember there were times that I didn't feel I was going to make it through. You need to be robust, but preparing for it, seeing that it's going to come, knowing it's going to come is helpful because it allows you to plan. And I think when it comes to the studies, when it comes to the assignments, have a look at how you work with those. When you get those assignments, what resources do you key into? How easy is that for you to do? Do you leave it to the last minute? How do you manage your time around those? I know you wrote a great book, Rory. It's in the Counselling Study resource for any of our members of the Counselling Study resource. It's called Getting Your Assignment in Order. And you've got the very first chapter is not about doing assignments. It's about planning. It's about getting your mental preparation ready and planning how you're going to kind of tackle the assignment. And it's time well spent. And as you say, Rory, when you feel that you're behind or you feel that there's a deadline, you feel you've got to get something in, your body goes into stress, your brain is producing cortisol, all the knowledge you knew has gone from your mind as you sit and look at a blinking cursor on the screen, knowing that it has to be in within the next 24, 48 hours. It can be very, very stressful indeed. But if it's eaten, that elephant is eaten in small bites, a little bit at a time, with a little bit of discipline and a structured plan. Wow, it can take the pressure off.
Yes, and we don't encourage people to eat elephants, of course. But they don't sell them at my supermarket, I can assure you that. But yeah, just plan your time and make sure that you do look after yourself. As Ken said, stress really switches the brain off, and you're not going to get anything done. Doing an assignment, some people can do it, I have to say. Doing an assignment the night before it's in, can put a great amount of stress on someone, and sometimes you just lose the capacity to think. But I acknowledge that life's business. You have children, you have jobs, you have life, and there's a great phrase, isn't there? It's not learning not how to get wet, it's learning how to dance in the rain. I think I like that one.
Oh, that is amazing. I'm going to leave this topic with just like one top tip, and it's a tip that I kind of discovered when I was doing my placement. And I would go to my placement, and I'd given that time, I'd driven in my car, and I was sat there, and then Rory, the client, may not have arrived, and I'd get a message last minute, the client's not coming. If I had another client, then I would have to sit for an hour in the room with not a lot to do. And I very quickly learned that if I take my study work with me, I take my assignment with me, it is an ideal opportunity to sit and work on my assignment. So think about how you can use opportunities, carry work with you. So when you have those opportunities, little breaks of time that you didn't expect that might be dumped on you, it doesn't become a waste of your time, rather becomes an investment in your time into another area, like getting an assignment done.
Absolutely. Yeah, just use all the time available in the best way you can.
Wow. So into practice matters. And today you're going to be telling us, Rory, about when counselling doesn't help. I get a cold chill when I think of counselling not helping. What do we do? Well,
just stay tuned is the answer to that. But, sometimes it becomes apparent we're working with a client and there's something not working, or they're not getting any benefit out of it. And sometimes we have to use our clinical thinking, one of my favourite phrases, clinical thinking, to think about why that is and what else we may offer the client. So stay tuned for that.
And that's coming up right now after this short message.
Take the stress out of your counselling studies and get the support of Rory and I by joining us in the Counselling Study Resource. See how Counselling Study Resource can help you. Visit counsellingtutor.com. That's counsellingtutor.com.
When therapy does not work, what do you do when you start to believe that your client is not getting any benefit from your time together? It's a question that comes up a lot in supervision and in training groups. If you believe your client is stuck or feeling worse, here are some observations that may help you consider the next steps. When contracting with a client, it's good practice to mention at the contracting stage that things may get a little more difficult before they get better. The reason for this is that the process of therapy may stir up long forgotten emotions, which the client may find difficult to process. Also, mentioning this at the contracting stage will give the client notice that if they're feeling a little worse, it's not because they're not putting in effort into therapy or they're not getting anything out of it. It's sometimes the process of having to look at stuff that's very difficult and feeling just a little worse. And once that's processed, people may get better or feel better about themselves or get clarity on what's going on for them. The other thing you can do is ask yourself by whose measure you're making the assessment. Sometimes even the smallest change can feel huge for a client, and sometimes as therapists we judge progress from our frame of reference, not the client. So it's always worth checking with the client how they feel, and also if you're doing a 6-week review, trying to get some sense of how they are and what might have changed for them. The other thing to consider is the type of therapy you practice a good fit for the presenting issue the client brings. Consider if the client may benefit from a different therapeutic approach. There's an ethical element here, because it's possible that a client who may come for one issue may actually discover it's a different issue. So it may be a fear of something. Say they have a fear of flying. It may be that person-centered therapy may not be a good fit for that client. It's very possible that a different form of therapy may be useful. And also, if you're in a time-limited environment, making an assessment on what work can be done within that time is very useful as well, because if a client's only got 8 sessions and they want to discuss their entire life, they may feel that they're under pressure to get stuff done, and that might make it feel that they're not getting anything from it, and indeed they may feel themselves that they just haven't got enough time. So always make an assessment whether the time available is going to be enough to work with the client. The other thing to consider, are you the problem? Don't underestimate the power of transference. Sometimes we can subconsciously bring feelings up from the past, which may stop us fully integrating ourselves into the relationship. So, if there is some resistance there, or you're getting the feeling that you cannot connect with the client, that's possibly transference and something you may need to examine. The other thing to consider is, does the client need any other form of support? Sometimes during the path of therapy, it becomes apparent that a client may require another kind of help. Clients who have such conditions as bipolar and schizophrenia may disconnect from reality when very unwell. So some people with these difficulties or these conditions may very well, if they're very, very unwell, not have psychological contact. And that's just so important when you're working in a therapeutic way. The same might go for someone who's using drugs or alcohol. They may present under the influence, in which case you cannot make any psychological contact. If you think that any of the above may apply to what's going on in your therapy room, the best place to take it is supervision. Use the time to explore your hunches. You never know what may change as a result.
Thank you as always, Rory. Practice matters. I think one of my favourite parts of the Counselling Tutor podcast, because it's really always directly applicable to what we do in service of our clients. So very grateful for that. And as always, you can get Rory's super duper download, and it's free. And where do you get that? Well, you just go to counsellingtutor.com. And that's 2 L's in counselling. We're based in the UK. counsellingtutor.com. Along the very top menu bar, click on our podcasts tab. Go to episode 101. That's today's episode. And right there on that page, all the show notes of what we've discussed today, links to any sites or resources that we may have mentioned. And you can download Rory's super duper handout for free from within that page. You just put in your email address and we will send that right through for you. And if you're a member of the handouts vault or our paid for service counselling study resource, no need to go and download it by putting your email in. Just log into your counselling study resource and that resource has already been added for you. So personal development, Rory, but personal development linked to our relationships while we're studying, while we're growing.
Yes, and it takes me back to the residentials that I used to lead when I taught. We went away for a couple of days and did a personal development or psychotherapy weekend, sometimes I called it. And I used to say, before people went home, I used to say to my students, remember, it may be very difficult to explain the processes that have gone on for you this weekend because your nearest and dearest haven't been here and they've not been, undertaking the personal development work and the reflective work. I said, so maybe when they ask what have you been doing, it may be difficult to explain. And I think that the process of personal development can have quite a huge impact on personal relationships. Certainly in my diploma class, I think about 50% of the women who attended ended relationships. 50%.
Wow. That's huge.
And they were very vocal about it as it came to an end. They said, as soon as this ends, I'm off.
Yeah.
And it was something that was echoed a lot in the training that Ken and myself did, and I did for over 10 years, that people's lives had changed. They changed their jobs. They changed their friendship groups. They changed their partners. They may see something in the relationship which wasn't satisfactory and couldn't be fixed. And sometimes what happens is that as you become more enlightened through counselling training, your views of the world change, and those that you've shared with your friendship groups may be completely different. And I experienced that with some of the friendship groups I had, certainly around things like sexism and racism and homophobia and things like that, things that I might have let slide before I went into counselling training. Certainly as I moved through level 3, I was more apt to challenge people and say, that doesn't sound right. That's not right. And it didn't make me very popular. And it's something echoed, I think, with a lot of people who go through counselling training. They feel that they must be themselves and amplify who they are. And sometimes that doesn't go down too well.
And it's empowering. I mean, we get to see it maybe within our clients where someone is empowered to say how they really feel, where maybe they've been cowering away, hiding their true feelings. And we might celebrate that as a win within the therapy room with the client. But when we see that playing out in our own lives, and it's our loved ones, our families, our job, and we're kind of starting to become more congruent and go, you know what, I don't know that I can do this anymore. I don't know that I can put up with that anymore. I don't know that I can continue this with this anymore. Then that growth can result in pain for ourselves on that journey, for our families. And I think that there's great merit in drawing that parallel. If we can see that, then let's look back to that client who comes into our counselling room, that where we're seeing that growth in them. That growth in them can also sometimes result in pain and change. Here's the one thing I know, and Rory, you are the best at this, because I remember coming into your class right at the very beginning. Rory was my tutor while I was studying, and one of the very first lessons was, this course comes with a warning. Kind of almost like a health and safety warning, but regarding there will be change. It is unlikely you start a counselling course and end up graduating and being a practicing counsellor and look around your life and see no change. Counselling is I guess a mechanism for change. We see that change in our clients that come in for counselling, but we'll also see it in ourselves and our own lives as we train to become a counsellor, because we do change. We change our views. I remember the day when I came to you, Rory, very distressed, saying, I'm really distressed because all the truths I've held for so many years are starting to disintegrate and fall down around me. And I've realized they're just my truths. They're not real truths. And that was tricky. And I also remember that the big change for me, I was in a job. It was a well-paid job, a desirable job. I'd just been given a director's position, a sales director's position in a company. And through my counselling training, I realised I just could not do it anymore. And I remember walking into the managing director with my keys, putting them down on the table and saying, I can't do this anymore. And he said to me, well, have you got another job lined up? And I said, no, because I didn't. But I just knew I couldn't do that anymore. And the expense to myself of that incongruence of continuing was not worth the money. That was an interesting conversation with the family, Rory. Yes. It worked out well, though, everybody.
Yes, I can remember a similar conversation when I worked at an organisation that remained nameless. And I went in and my manager said to me, how are you today? I said, well, when I came in, I only had two worries. I said, one was finding another job and the other was working with you. I said, and now I only have one thing to worry about. That's finding another job. And with that, I went.
Yeah. There it is.
And, I can still hear that person's voice echoing down the corridor saying, what am I going to do? And I kind of got in my car and drove home, and I would imagine a similar interesting conversation. But yeah, it's empowering. I mean, embrace that is what I would say. You're changing, you're developing, you're finding your own truths, your own reality on your terms. And, embrace that, because that's the greatest thing, because that's what we embracing our clients, isn't it? When they sit in front of us and say, I've changed, I'm going to be doing this now. I'm not going to be putting up with that. I'm going to be resetting my life so it fits with me. And we celebrate that with our clients, and we flipping well should celebrate that in ourselves, even if it's a difficult path.
Yeah. What I love is from the feedback, from the stories, from the experiences of being a tutor, of being a supervisor, is we've seen this change. We've seen it again and again, experienced it in my own life. And it's interesting because with the enlightenment also comes an element of courage, because it takes the courage to be able to make the differences that are sometimes painful. And pain generally comes with a price, and growth generally comes with a price, and that price is pain that we have to go through, a short period of pain to enjoy the growth on the other side. And it can be a very difficult time. And specifically, and we're talking about us growing and maybe those around us not growing or not understanding that growth. And one area of that can be that they don't really understand what it is we're studying. You're learning all of these new theories and new concepts, learning about self, and you want to share that. You're excited about that. And you may find that you don't have a responsive audience because they don't get it. And how can they? How can we expect them to get it? They're not on the course. They don't see it like we do. And that's why I really believe that the Counselling Tutor Facebook group has been such a success. Over 20,000, much more than 20,000 by now, Rory, like-minded students, counsellors, tutors, supervisors from all around the world. And this is the kind of stuff we talk about. So if you're not in that group, get onto Facebook, put in Counselling Tutor and come and join us. We will warmly welcome you. And we want to hear about how you're growing because we can relate and we can share that with you.
Absolutely. And that was Podcast 101. What a great episode. We started off with balancing life with studying. I talked about when counselling doesn't help and what we do about that. And then finally, we've talked about how personal development can affect relationships. Well, that was 101. And as always, stay grounded and stay safe.
Take care.
Take the stress out of your counselling studies and get the support of Rory and I by joining us in the Counselling Study Resource. Counselling Study Resource, or CSR for short, is the world's most comprehensive assignment guidance and study support resource for students just like you of counselling and psychotherapy. See how Counselling Study Resource can help you. Visit counsellingtutor.com. That's counsellingtutor.com.